to make this small little venue that turned out to, as we enlarged it into a 5,200 seat theater, I just learned from Bill Graham, who was another Dutch uncle of mine, and Bill's, the way he made that legendary feel to kids like me, to fans like me, of the Fillmore East and West, were one you'd see in those great liner notes of every great live album recorded at the Fillmore. So I really inspired and tried to promote my artists to each summer to produce live concerts, live recordings. And so I did, first was able to convince Joni Mitchell to do her, which she kind of anchored in and around the amphitheater performances, which was her last, with Tom Scott and the LA Express, kind of that last great pop rock album of hers, Miles of Aisles, which I thought was a great title. Sure. And she gave me my first gold record. And then Jackson Browne's Running on Empty, the Blues Brothers, Briefcase Full of Blues, of course, James Taylor's Greatest Hits album. And me being that kind of fan, and maybe one of the, if not the youngest promoter in the international touring business in this small little market, Los Angeles, you know, I not had become frustrated, but there's just so much creativity you can put into producing concerts and coming up with a great opening act. And Wasserman to keep me there. Did you pitch the record company idea? Well, what happened at 24, so maybe what, 77, 78, Mo Austin kept, I had all but became the house promoter for all the Warner Brothers artists. You know, they being housed just down the street. Yeah. And Mo was trying to convince me to leave, to come to Wasserman and MC and come over to Warner's and be a real A&R guy. And Wasserman sat me down. It was only Wasserman, and called me to see me and sat me down and goes, "What will it take for you to stay here?" And I said, I want to create like my own kind of American Apple Records. And he never reached over so quickly to shake my hand and says, "You've got a deal." So then, how did Tom Petty come into the mix? Well, again, right place at the right time. I had seen Tom, Cameron Crowe, best friend, and I went and saw. Cameron was, of course, you know, wonderful contributing editor and legendary reporter for Jan Wenner and Rolling Stone. He and I went, always being the youngest guys in the room, we went to the Whiskey to see Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And I love this band, you know, guys from Gainesville, but yet had such a blend of McGuinn and the Byrds and the Stones rhythm and feel, and of course, you know, mired in Tom's vocal and such a Dylan, Neil kind of phrasing. I just love them. Sure. And so even though maybe they had played maybe 3,000 seats maximum in Los Angeles prior, I was captivated enough that I just, so you were able to make a deal with him. I booked him for 2 concerts the next summer. Excuse me. They sold out 11,000 seats. It was a benchmark career move for him. And but in the interim, I messed this up in terms of time, so forgive me. But Cameron and I had seen him at the Whiskey, and that summer, I had brought Bob Dylan back to Los Angeles after he had last played Thanksgiving with the band. And he was touring and had 8 concerts completely sold out, maybe my toughest ticket ever. And I was completely besieged with everyone in the world calling me for tickets for that opening night. It was such an event. And sure enough, Cameron, out of the blue, Cameron calls me, and he was finally interviewing Tom for his first interview for Rolling Stone, and said, "Look, you know, I just told, you know, Tommy you could maybe get him in." And So I just rolled my eyes, go, Tom, man, I've kept Nicholson down to 2 tickets, Beatty down to 2, Jackson Browne is coming as a single. I have no seats unless I put him in like folding chairs or I put him up on stage. So lo and behold, Tom showed up with his guitar tech, and that's where I met him, and came in with his guitar tech. And I remember I had no place to put him, and so I literally dragged him into the dressing room and put him off into a corner. And he, of course, was just fascinated, and of all things, Bob Dylan.
Right. Was it a good Dylan show? Could you hear Dylan? Could you hear Dylan enunciate the lyrics?
Well, what was interesting, Johnny, imagine this. So we developed a routine, and Dylan would ask me each night to basically give him a list of who was out in the audience. And so I'd go through the list, Jackson Browne, Joni, you know, that opening night. And it got to the end of it, and I go, and Tom Petty. And he goes, who's Tom Petty? And I go, well, I told him Elvis Costello was in the audience, and I told him Tom, and how is this rocker that I just loved. So imagine I put probably his biggest fan, Mr. Petty, out in the audience, folding chairs, and Dylan gets the 10th, 12th song of the set, and suddenly goes, and I want to welcome Miss Joni Mitchell, and he'd go through the list. And then imagine you're Tom and you're out in the audience and you're seeing your hero, and all of a sudden it's like, and Tom Petty.
He name-checked Tom,
and
young Tom Petty,
so I giggled, thinking to myself, God, I would have loved to have seen his face. And everyone comes back after the show, and Tom and this guy comes back, and Tom collapses into my arms like he's going, Elvis, you're Elvis, you're Elvis. And I'm going, I look at Bugs and his guy, and I say, that's good, right? And he goes, oh, that's good. And brought Tom back, and I introduced him to Dylan.
Had you signed him by then?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so that was a good closing.
I was in the midst of I maybe had just conspired with Wasserman to set up my new label. So you
used the power of the amphitheater in a way to help you in that situation.
The karma of my life and/or career, and it was just, it was just the way I work and the way I live, and my friends, and so only my best friend could have pressured me into getting at this time this young rocker into the audience, into the theater, sold out show. But it was the fascinating how it ended up.
For more Q Score, please check us out at impresario.tv to find out what goes on behind the curtain and how the film and TV music gets made. It happens right here. Tune in.